The Prophet of Allah sitting with Sahaba, sitting with the greatest ummah that ever walked the earth. The greatest ummah that ever walked the earth. Authentic hadith. And this is my opinion, or the opinion of the ulama and the mashayikh. Allah sends down Quran speaking about Sahaba. He says, I am pleased with them and they are pleased with me. The Prophet of Allah in the authentic hadith, tune in, huh? Tune in. In the authentic hadith, the Prophet of Allah sitting with Sahaba, he says to them, I see what you don't see, and I hear what you don't hear. He says, أَطَّتِ السَّمَاء وَحُقَّ لَهَا أَن تَئِطْ. He says, the heavens have squeaked, and they have every right to squeak. So Sahaba are amazed. What do you mean, O Prophet of Allah? What do you mean that the heavens have squeaked? What do you mean that the 7 heavens have squeaked? You know, my brothers, because mashallah, today we've become a people of science and logic, you know. Everything we know about astronomy is not even 1% of what's really out there. And our solar system, our galaxy, is one of millions and millions that are out there. And in our solar system alone, in our galaxy alone, one of the scholars was saying, he says, there are so many stars in our galaxy alone. I'm not going to tell you what's, ours is one of millions, so never mind the millions, our one alone. He says in our galaxy alone, there are so many stars. You know, the sun is one of the smaller stars that are in our galaxy. And the sun alone is millions and millions of times bigger than the earth. So the scholar is saying, if we were given 1 second to name every single star that is in our galaxy, you ready for this? You will need 300 trillion years and you wouldn't name every star that is in our galaxy. And all this is in Samawat al-Ula, is in the first heavens. The Prophet of Allah is saying the 7 heavens have squeaked and they have every right to squeak. Why? Why, O Prophet of Allah? Why have they squeaked? You know, sometimes you put a lot of weight onto something, so it starts making noise, it starts giving way because it can't carry the load. The Prophet of Allah says the 7 heavens can no longer carry the load. The load of what? He says, مَا فِي مَوْضِعَ أَرْبَ أَصَابِعَ. There isn't room in all these heavens for 4 fingers except there is an angel in prostration to Allah. And you think Allah needs your money on the way out, huh? You think Allah cares whether you pray or you don't. There isn't room for 4 fingers in all the heavens except there is an angel in prostration to Allah. Angels, from the moment they're created to the moment they stand before Allah, one continuous sajda. They never did anything else. One continuous sajda for billions of years. Yet when they stand before Allah, they say, oh Allah, forgive us. Forgive us, Ya Allah, for we did not give haqq to your ibadah. We didn't give rights. We didn't worship you the way you should be worshipped. And you and I think that Allah needs us. People walking around with a big chip on his shoulder, with an attitude. My brothers, Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't need anyone. Allah doesn't need anyone. In the hadith Qudsi, in the authentic hadith, Allah Azza wa Jal he says, Ya ibadi, are my slaves. Every single one of you is hungry except whom I feed. Every one of you is hungry except whom I feed. Today when you go to buy a meal, you think I bought this meal. No, you're wrong. Allah fed you. So people start looking at their meals and he starts having pride and arrogance. That I don't eat this and I don't eat that. I only eat specific foods. Brother, it's Allah that feeds you. Allah says, oh my slaves, every one of you with the exception of none, every one of you is naked except whom I clothe. Today the brother buys a Gucci hat or a Louis Vuitton bag. Allahu Akbar, but you can't give him salams anymore. You Can't. You can't give him salams. There used to be a time when, you know, the boys used to wear Nikes. No. We don't wear Nikes anymore. We wear Lacoste and Gucci shoes and Louis Vuitton shoes because I'm a cut above the rest. And pride and arrogance. And he feels and he believes that I'm something. Allahu Akbar. Now all of your wealth has become what your shoes are. What? So if your shoes are something, then you're something. What? And if your shoes are not up to scratch, does that mean you're equal to nothing? Yeah, that's how shallow you become. Now the Muslims, he looks at his clothes and his watch and the car he drives, then he judges where he fits in society. He says, "Oh my slaves, every one of you is naked, except whom I clothe. And oh my slaves, every single one of you is lost, except whom I guide." Today the brother comes on to deen. Now he starts looking at everyone. These people are kuffar, these people are lost, these people are going to hellfire. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Who died and made you the Prophet, man? The Prophet never did that. Every one of you is lost except whom I guide. Allah doesn't need anyone. Anyone. Don't ever think, my brother. You know, people now walking around, Allahu Akbar. The brother goes to Hajj. When he comes back, you can't call him Muhammad anymore. It's Hajj Muhammad. Brother, I've been to Hajj. So please, if you don't mind, you call me Hajj Muhammad. Really? Really? What, you think that because you performed Hajj, that you're equal to something now in Allah's eyes? Is this the arrogance you have with Allah? And people get upset. Brother, I didn't spend $10,000 and sacrifice my family for 4 weeks only to return and you call me Muhammad. That's Hajj Muhammad. The Prophet of Allah in the authentic hadith, speaking to Sahaba, speaking to the greatest ummah that ever walked the earth, speaking to your fathers, speaking to a ummah that happily gave their lives for the pleasure of Allah. People who did the utmost, the biggest sacrifices, and they deemed themselves as the most insignificant people. Today you do nothing and you think you're up there. They did everything and they thought that they were down there. The Prophet of Allah speaking to them, he says, none of you, who's he speaking to? He says, none of you will enter Jannah through your actions. None.
أخي أبلغ هنا الأصحاب أني راحل مدبر سأترك زينة الدنيا وأمضي حيث لا أخبر أخي أبلغ هنا الأصحاب أني راحل